Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. I am 28 male and I have a cousin named David. He is 6 months younger than me and we had completely different backgrounds. His parents were rich and ran a successful business, whereas mine were salaried employees. In school, I fared better while he was a regular school bully. However, I tolerated him as he was my cousin. When we turned 18, my parents got me a vintage car after saving up for years. For some reason, he was jealous and kept shit-talking about my car, even though he just got a brand new Toyota. Nevertheless, after I took my car for a spin, he said he wanted to drive it and see, and I said no. I was not comfortable giving it to him at all. But my parents and aunt and uncle forced me to allow him to borrow it. And he said he'll be back in no time, with the broadest smile on his face. That time itself, I knew something was gonna happen. David drove the car at such a high speed that he lost control and crashed it at a median. He got out unharmed and called us to come get him. When I saw the condition of my car, I burst out into tears as I was looking forward to driving the car so much. When my parents asked his parents to cover for the damage their son did, they had the audacity to say, "My son drove well. It's your fault for letting him drive an old-ass car. In fact, we should be asking you for compensation because David is still in shock." I was so angry when I heard this and wanted to confront David. But my parents did not want more problems after this, and my family completely cut all ties with him. Last month, after 10 years, we met David and his parents at a family reunion and tried to be cordial. At this time, I was earning quite well and owned a new Audi A3 myself. A conversation about cars came up, and when David learned about it, he was shocked and said he didn't believe it. I didn't reply to him as I didn't give a shit about what he thought. Literally 5 minutes later, I heard my car's engine revving on the street. And by the time I got out of the door, I saw David speeding away in my car. I was so shocked and wondered how he found the key. When I realized that my uncle must have seen me keep it on the table and given it to David. When he asked for it, I started screaming at my uncle because it was simply outrageous what he and David did. Everyone tried calling David, but he wouldn't pick up the phone. The whole night was ruined. An hour later, my dad gets a call from the local police station saying that his son, driving my car, had gotten a speeding ticket. So basically, David had posed to be me, showing my papers from the car at the station, and given my name plus contact details. My uncle immediately turned and told me that I better stick to that story or they will be held to pay, because he didn't want a felony on David's record as it'll ruin his future. I didn't give a damn and I headed straight to the station and set the record straight, then filed a case against David for stealing my car, and I walked out. My uncle and aunt were so upset and came behind me yelling that I was a twat for ruining their son's life. However, my dad, who was with me, and a few others told them to stick it where the sun doesn't shine. That is it for now, and I'll update as soon as there's a new development. Update. I eventually dropped the auto theft that I filed against David, and it was resolved into a misdemeanor. However, this still went on record, and David lost his job because word got around about his arrest. He spent a few days in jail till I dropped my charges. My aunt, uncle, and David will bring it up to whoever will listen. What a selfish person I am and how I spoiled my cousin's career. I simply don't pay attention to it. It is so not surprising that David grew up to be an a-hole. His parents ruined his life with their indulgences and assholery. I'm so glad he didn't crash your car this time. I can't believe he got into trouble. And then he used your name and his parents were expecting you to take the fall for him. What on earth would you do that for? Maybe spending a few nights in jail will help him see the light and make him change his ways, but somehow I doubt that. Story 2. My sister-in-law, we'll call her Emma, is married to a huge dick named Dan. To give you an idea of what he's like, he has cheated on Emma with 4 different girls in the past 2 years. And has made several embarrassing or demeaning comments about Emma in front of us. We have tried talking to Emma about him multiple times and remind her often that she can always stay with us if she feels unsafe, but she brushes us off and denies everything. A couple of weeks ago, we, Emma, Dan, me, wife, and our 2 kids, 9 female and 5 male, were eating dinner together at my house. My son accidentally dropped a plate and broke it. We didn't think it was that big of a deal, but Dan started yelling at my son and telling him that he was a worthless, useless little shit. I had to step between them to get him to stop, and by then I was seeing red. I told Dan to get the F out of my house and that if he came back, I would call the police on him for trespassing. Then I told Emma that she was welcome to stay back anytime as long as Dan was not with her. They both left immediately. Well, we've been worried about Emma since then, so we decided to invite her over for dinner again. We reminded her that Dan was not welcome and she said that she understood. Yesterday, the doorbell rang and when Emma said she would be at our house and I answered it. Emma and Dan are standing there on our porch. I said out loud, "For F's sake," and slammed the door on them. Wife heard and came out after a couple of minutes to try and get them to stay, but they had already driven off. Wife is pissed because she thinks I should be more understanding because Emma is going through a lot. And it's not easy to leave an abusive relationship. Kids are devastated because they love their aunt and don't know why they can't see her. My son is convinced that it's his fault even though we've told him that it isn't. I just can't justify continuing to expose my children to that kind of behavior. I know that Emma is suffering, but I need to protect my children first. Am I the a-hole? You're not the a-hole, OP, for not wanting a man like Dan in your home and around your children. But your sister-in-law is in an abusive relationship and likely Dan wouldn't let her come alone to your house. Protect your kids, but also recognize your sister-in-law is trapped right now. Abusers love to isolate their victims so that they feel like they have nowhere to go. Please continue to take every opportunity to make sure Emma knows she has your family to fall back on when she gains the strength to leave her abuser. Women are killed every day by the men abusing them, so please don't take this lightly. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole, and neither is Emma. Your wife is a bit of an a-hole for putting a guy who abused her son above her own kid, and Dan is the biggest a-hole, naturally. As for Emma, being in an abusive relationship is not her fault, but it is a responsibility, I'm afraid. Just as with mental illness, very rarely can you force someone to get help against their will. Just make sure Emma knows you're there when she decides to leave him, and that she can come on her own. Doubtful that he'll let her, and that's pretty much all you can do. You do need to have a serious conversation with your wife though. Not the a-hole, you are protecting your children from this a-hole abuse. Sister-in-law's husband had no right to shout at your son and call him worthless. He has no right to anyway, but especially and the plate that was broken was yours and happened in your own home. Accidents happen especially with children, and I'm 25. I still occasionally drop things and break them. We all do. If he blew up like that over something so minor, I would be worried about how he would react to a bigger issue involving your kids. I know your wife is worried about her sister, but you need to put your family first. Also, you invited her around and specified that you would only have her over, and she ignored that. If sister-in-law is in denial about what's happening in her marriage, you can only help so far before you end up pushing her more towards him until she makes the decision herself. Then when she does, you can help and support her. Hey look, I get it. I don't want to say too much, but my family has actually been in a really similar situation to what you guys are going through right now. From my experience, the only way any of this can work is if Emma is willing to listen and get help. Please make it clear to her that you're only doing this out of concern. Make sure she knows that your door is always open for her, but her only. Then you need to step back and let her make her decision. Later on, only step in if you think it's a genuine threat to her life. It's shitty and awful, but you can't save someone hell-bent on drowning. Best of luck, OP. Story 3. I, 30 female, am a single mom to 2 boys, aged 7. Their dad died 5 years ago, and it's been just us since then. We couldn't afford our house anymore, so my brother-in-law took us in. Now, 5 years later, I finally got the insurance money for my husband's policy. His death was suspicious, so it took a long time to sort it out. And it's enough money for me and the boys to afford our own apartment, and since the boys are in school, I also got a job. Things really turned around for us and we moved to our own place. It's not much, but we each have our own room and it's a place we can all call our own, which I absolutely love. To the issue at hand, my brother-in-law just asked me to contribute to his wedding. Now that I have some more money, his fiancée says I should pay for part of their wedding. My part would be somewhere between 40 to 50k. I told them I do have money now, but I'm starting college funds for the boys. Finally making bigger payments for better health insurance. The boys can now pick their hobbies, etc. I told my brother-in-law I am willing to give him about 5k for the wedding or pay for their honeymoon in that value, because he has really been kind and generous to me. But the amount his fiancée is asking for is just too much, and I feel it will be better spent on my children. Brother-in-law agrees with me, but his fiancée called me an ungrateful bitch and said it's the least I can do to repay them. Am I the a-hole for not helping them with the money for the wedding? Now for some comments. What? Contribute between 40 and 50k? Like, that's not all of it? Absolutely insane. Anyway, not the a-hole. Then helping you out was not conditional or any reimbursement. They were able to and did so. Your money is better spent on your boys. I'm pretty sure your late husband would agree. Hell no. Not the a-hole. Your brother-in-law's fiancé has managed to take the good that your brother-in-law did and twist it into something transactional. I imagine that you'd help them if they were in need. But this isn't about that. It's about power and entitlement. I'm sorry that you're in this position. Keep on putting your kids and yourself first. And help people how you can, when you can. Not the a-hole at all. And even your brother-in-law can see that. That's ridiculous money for a wedding, especially when you have 2 sons to raise and provide for on one salary. Like if it was helping with medical bills, mortgage down payment or debt for brother-in-law or helping with his child's college fund, maybe I would suggest helping out a small bit. But a wedding? That fiancée can get lost. She has no idea of what can happen in the real world. Unlike both you and your brother-in-law. Also, I'm very sorry for both you and your son's loss. And very happy that you had someone to help you all while you got back on your feet.